Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Michelle Childs. I'm the Operations Director for COABE. I'd like to welcome you to the webinar, High School Equivalency Testing Using Success Stories to Support Your Outreach Efforts. Within 24 hours, you will receive a certificate for CEU verification. So you will not be receiving this today. You will be receiving this by 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time tomorrow. You can download the resources for this webinar and previous webinars on our Adult Educators repository located at www.coabe.org/educatorsresources. Educate and Elevate. About 80,000 legislative contacts have been made since April 1st, 2017. You can learn more on our website at educateandelevate.org. Take action today with only 3 quick clicks. And I want you to mark your calendars for COABE's 2019 National Conference. It's March 31st through April 3rd, 2019 at the Marriott in New Orleans. More than 30 strands to choose from will be available, including Workforce Strand, CTE Strand, and the new Adult Learner Strand. Also, our Research to Practice is highlighting high school equivalency. As part of our Research to Practice initiative, each webinar will will be helping to answer a common question that adult educators have. This webinar will be helping to address the following question: how do adult education providers promote their successes to attract new candidates? Also, in our winter issue 2015, Lennox McLennan wrote an article, Forum Responding to Changes in High School Equivalency Testing. If you're interested in reading this article, you can go to our website at coabe.org under our Journal tab, where you can access past issues. The COABE Journal aims to serve the needs of adult education field and enables the field to share the research and best practices. Oops. This webinar is made possible with the support of Burlington English, the publisher that cares. And on behalf of Burlington English, we have Robert Breitbart with us. Robert?
Hello there. Thank you, everyone. And Michelle, if you, I'll switch screens here. Thank you and greetings to everyone from Fort Myers International Airport. So besides Burlington and the great session that we're going to have today, you also might get a few minutes of smooth jazz. So looking forward to a great presentation. Mike Johnson's one of my all-time favorites. So very much looking forward to hearing what he has to say. To all of you that know Burlington English, you know that we are incredibly WIOA focused. And with that, if you've been a customer, a user of Burlington English, you're familiar with our career pathways. If you've seen us in the past or haven't just yet, you really owe it to yourself. Take a look at our website and the YBE and a lot of the new things we have coming. Most particularly coming up this August with the launch of the new school year is our enhanced career pathways and now career exploration and soft skills. So even more focus on those WIOA common measures of exploring for new careers, getting the skills necessary to not just get the job, but also keep the job. So again, make sure you take a look at www.burlingtonenglish.com. Like I say, how do we help our learners integrate into the local workforce board efforts? How do we help students lead into unsubsidized employment? So I think you'll really get a lot out of our career, new enhanced career pathways, which again, we're calling now our career exploration and soft skills. So with that, I will turn this back over to Michelle, and looking forward to, like I say, one of the great folks that I've enjoyed learning a lot from over the years, the great people at DRC and Mike Johnson. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Robert. Okay, I'd like to introduce you to our presenter. Our presenter today is Mike Johnson. He has been with He has been with Data Recognition Corporation, CTB, for 10 years and involved with adult education for over 20 years. As a National Sales Director for Adult Assessments, Mike is responsible for supporting and working with the product development teams for TABE and TASC to meet the needs of adult learners in ESL, basic skills, and high school equivalency programs. Mike's responsibilities include managing assessing targets for adult basic education and providing support for test and program development related to the industry direction and meeting the needs of the customers. And without further ado, Mike Johnson.
Thank you, Michelle. Sorry about that.
No problem.
I am going to share my screen. I just lost my control to do that, and I'm going to jump back to that 1 second. And I totally lost all my controls except your picture. There we go. Sorry about that. Welcome again, everybody, and I apologize for that little hiccup there. Hopefully you'll see the screen. And today, I'm happy to join the group and talk about, revisit the topic that we talked about at a previous COABE conference about using success stories to support outreach efforts amongst adult education providers. As Michelle mentioned, my name is Mike Johnson, and I do manage the TABE and TASC programs for DRC. And I've been involved in adult education for a number of years. And I do travel quite extensively across the country, maybe not as much as Robert does, but I do have a lot of history, and I gathered a lot of experiences. So I wanted to share those as we go through today's presentation, kind of going through the different resources that are available, sharing some of those success stories, and then looking at maybe new alternatives throughout our agenda. Certainly have some time for questions maybe at the end, and I know that there is a chat menu on the webinar, so if you do have questions, we can certainly collect those during the chat feature. Looking at the reasons why we do outreach, and I think I have a quote here from Rishi Sagnola, who's the head of adult education for the Kentucky Council of Post-Education, and also the chair of the National Council of State Directors of Adult Education. And I think it's a great quote, that he has stated a few times, that adult ed providers have done a great job grabbing the low-hanging fruit. And that's to say that, you've done a great job servicing the students that have walked into your doors. But now, how do you get those students that are not coming into your doors? And that's the challenge that all programs are facing. And I think that's even more noticeable today as unemployment goes down, then the perceived need for services like adult education may go down as well. And so doing outreach becomes more important in a day and age where the validation of your skills and the need for newer skills is certainly more important, even though the workforce unemployment rate is going down. So as we look at the different types of outreach and why outreach is important, we can certainly see that there is public outreach and sharing the importance of your own existence and making sure that programs are available, or programs understand what you do on a local scale. You do that on a couple of different reasons. You do that certainly to raise awareness and to raise funds. You may do outreach for a fundraising drive. You may do outreach for a student drive. You may do outreach just to make sure that programs know that you're doing a registration or enrollment period. You may do outreach to raise partnerships with the business community. And we'll look at examples of a couple of these as we go through. So, outreach can be a lot of different things, and outreach doesn't always have to be fundraising or, let's say marketing aspects of that. As we go forward, we'll look at a couple of examples of that. And one of the best cases, or one best purposes, is to promote your successes of, when you're doing outreach. So, when you're working with students and adult ed students, what are the successes that they have gone through, whether they're, successes that relate to how quickly or how efficiently a person goes through your program, or what successes they have reached after your program. It's important to keep track of that information. And obviously many requirements under WIOA require that you do keep track of that and the outcomes, but on a more personal level, what are the outcomes? How has that affected a person's family? How has that affected a person's life? All of those kind of outcomes can turn into great outreach types of activities, and maybe as a collection turn into an outreach more campaign, and we'll talk about that as we go forward. But also collecting those examples, and those examples locally, because you have a population around your centers that are like residents. So normally you have a population of residents that are going through the same cases, and whether that is, they're all affected by a industry leaving the region, or they're affected by some other change in the economy. Those are all common themes. So, if you can show the outcomes or a benefit that you've provided a few students, they likely will affect many students in your area. And so it's always to try to find out what affects your local population. Some great numbers, and it's always good to put the data behind the outreach efforts, is to show the data from the Department of Labor on why is it important to continue always on the learning pathway. And as we see the blue side of the chart shows the increase in your weekly earnings as your education level goes up, and the green side shows the unemployment rate going up as your education level it does not go well. And I think it's important to point out the third one from the bottom. That third one from the bottom says some college, no degree. And this is one I've always paid attention to, this line, because 15 years ago that line did not exist. There was not a reference for some college in this kind of tracking data point. There was always high school diploma, there was always associate's degree, there was always bachelor's degree. They were not tracking this kind of category of some college. And I think that's where we're seeing, what can I do after my high school diploma, whether, and that's where we're seeing the new career and workforce programs, we're seeing the CTE programs fit into that. So you are having a benefit, and a tangible benefit, by having that, whether it's a certificate program, whether it's a career technical program, you're having and you have that documented evidence to include into your outreach efforts, that you don't have to, let's say, stop working to go full-time to get an associate's or a bachelor's degree. Having that some college, and that traditionally might be a trade or a technical field, you're going to see that increase in your weekly earnings almost equivalent to your associate's degree. So again, working on that as a stepping stone does provide a great benefit to students.
Hey, Mike.
Yes.
I'm sorry to interrupt you. I just had a few people sharing in the chat that they're having a hard time, like your mic's cutting in and out a little bit. If you can either speak a little louder or maybe even move the mic a little closer so everyone can hear you a little better.
I will do both, and hopefully we'll improve that.
Thank you so much.
So one thing I do want to reference, and I think a great tool, and certainly one that we'll focus on, is the COABE Marketing Outreach Toolkit. It's available on the COABE website, and I'll reference that at the end, where we can find that directly. But the marketing toolkit that COABE provides you all the resources on what you could use, and you don't have to use the whole toolkit. There are different pieces and parts that will be great pieces that you can use, and we'll touch on different parts of the toolkit throughout the presentation. The toolkit can help you with different parts, as we mentioned. So if you want to write an article for your newspaper about the value of your program and do that in an op-ed area, there are helpful hints in the toolkit on how to write an op-ed piece. If you want to do that, how to write a success story, you have the tools in the toolkit to write a success story. Also, just on a general press release, one of the best things, and we're certainly in that time right now, is graduation. If you're promoting the graduation for your students now here in the summer, spring and summer, how to promote that, whether it's the number of students, if that number is increasing, if you've had, a lot of people promote that you've had either, whether it's a parent and a child going through the graduation together or some great story like that, those are great pieces to put together in a press release for your local paper. So you have the toolkits to put together for that. And I think we're starting to see that, as Michelle mentioned, the Educate and Elevate campaign that COABE is doing and the increase in adult ed funding across the nation just from that campaign is a great example on how to use parts of the toolkit for that. Looking at some examples, going left to right, there are guidelines within the toolkit on how to write an op-ed piece, what you're supposed to be doing to direct your op-ed piece. You want to make sure that you're looking for an answer in an op-ed piece. You're certainly proposing, you're pointing out the issues, you're pointing out, what would it be successful to change those issues, and then what you're wanting to do to drive some feedback from the readers on those op-ed pieces. And when we talk about op-ed, it's not only print media. Op-ed, there's a lot more opportunities online. So you have, an op-ed piece for an online newspaper as well, or an online blog site. We'll talk more about that as we go on as well. Also, if you wanted to do email campaigns to your email list, you may be having email lists with local organizations. So you might partner with another organization, whether it's the Rotary Club or the Lions Club, to promote your activities, and you want to have a great example of email to use as a template. The toolkit has many different examples for the email campaigns on what you're promoting, what you're trying to drive the action for. And remember, you're always trying to make sure that you're driving the action to your benefit for that. And then, as we mentioned earlier with the press releases, what is the purpose of the press release? The press release has to be concise in order to fit on one page. You're not writing a story with a press release. So the toolkit does also do a great job in getting to the point in what the press release is supposed to do. So again, we'll talk more and more about the COABE marketing toolkit, but it does promote and have the tools that you need for many different areas of outreach. Looking at some real life examples, we see this out of California, and again, I have this as an example. This is the Oxnard Adult School celebrating their continuing education program. And so again, we see this as a two-part article. They have a little bit of an article, they have their agenda on what they're doing locally with their special events. One thing that I like about this is if you notice this article on the left-hand screen, and you may or may not notice it depending on how much you do online, but this is a very national template. It's actually a Gannett-based newspaper. The Ventura County Star is a Gannett-owned newspaper. USA Today is owned by Gannett newspapers. So by posting this in the Ventura County Star, the Oxnard Adult School has the ability to have this picked up by other Gannett newspapers throughout California and potentially nationally, depending on what the story is. So again, we always have to remember that whatever we're doing may go beyond our local region that we're working with. So, and that's the benefit of the local media is now kind of being controlled by national media. Yes, it is the Ventura County Star, which is most likely a very small local newspaper, but their online presence has a much wider reach, and it does allow us to get our message out to a much wider audience. So again, not too many people outside of Oxnard are going to care about the agenda of the special events that they have to celebrate their week here. but the story of what they're doing may get picked up by other people and may drive some additional awareness for their program. When we look at public service announcements, I think one of the best ones out there is the finishyourdiploma.org program from the Ad Council. If you haven't seen it, I think that it's hard to avoid it. If you're in an urban setting, you see it on bus stops. If you're watching TV, you'll see it with the Hollywood celebrities. They'll talk about finishing their diploma. You'll see it in newspapers. You'll see it online as well. So the Ad Council does a great job. That advocacy plan is funded by donations from the Dollar General Literacy Foundation. And the Dollar General does a great job in promoting literacy activities and adult education activities. I would encourage everybody, if you are not looking at Dollar General Literacy Foundation grants for anything that you're doing locally, to certainly look into that. Certainly if you've attended any of the COABE conferences in the past 3 to 4 years, you know that Dollar General does some great grant giving at the COABE conference. So the Literacy Foundation for Dollar General is a great supporter for adult education and for literacy in general. And the finishyourdiploma.org campaign is a great example of that, encouraging everybody to finish their high school equivalency if they have not. And it drives them, no matter what state they're in, no matter what test their state uses, to finish their high school equivalency with the free resources that are available. And so you may look at that as, what can I do locally? And just to use that as an example with the Dollar General again, in order to be eligible for some Dollar General literacy grant funding, you have to be within, I think, 30 miles of a Dollar General store. That's generally the first threshold. So there's quite a few Dollar General stores throughout the country. And so to be within 30 miles of one of those stores is going to touch a lot of adult ed providers. And that makes you eligible at least to apply for possible funding. And that's always the first step, is to apply for funding. And this finishyourdiploma.org is certainly a big national campaign, but you can look at what you can do locally to expand the awareness of your services, potentially with additional funding. If you have not looked at the finishyourdiploma.org campaign, I encourage you to go out to that website and go through that. There are resources there that you can use locally yourselves. You can make sure that you're listed yourself as a resource that local students can find you, to make sure that you're listed correctly as a resource for people to come in and finish their high school equivalency if you're not listed there already. Looking at what we want to do when we share a success story, obviously we're sharing good news. We want to share the good news with any of the accomplishments that we have of our program. That may be key things that your students have done, that may be key things that your staff has done, that may be expansion of your program. You may have been awarded more grants by your state governing body to cover more counties in your state, and that is a great time to announce through an advocacy campaign or a press release that you are now the provider in more counties. And how do programs or students reach you? So you want to make sure that you can share those success stories. And you're also sharing those success stories and that good news with the policymakers. Certainly that Elevate and Educate campaign from COABE is doing exactly that, is sharing the good news that the country is doing at adult education as a whole, and what can benefit from additional funding. So we're seeing that additional $35 million that is being allocated for adult education nationally, and what the benefit that will bring. You want to do that same thing with your local lawmakers, your local funding sources. And those are always, again, your other funders that may not be legislatures, they may be, other philanthropic organizations as well. When you're looking at the success stories and providing the connection, that's the important part. You want to look at what's the connection between your success story and your audience, working with that emotional connection. So you want to have the real life connection for the program. It's not just always the facts and figures. It's what did you do with the funding that you had? What made you successful from the beginning? What could you do if you had more funding? So if your campaign is and your goal is to raise more funding, it's certainly, I was this successful with this amount of funding. We can expand our program to reach even more students if we have more funding. But you want to be showing that in a positive format. And that's when you're doing that with your state funding sources or your local funding sources. If we're doing it with a local program and a business partnership, we're showing them what we're saving them in time in doing that themselves. So there's a lot of different success stories, not just financial, but in partnerships as well. And we'll talk about partnerships as we move forward. When we talk about what topics to cover, we also remember to need to be specific in our topics. You may provide a lot of services at your program. You may provide vocational training, or you may provide high school equivalency or rehabilitation services, or continuing ed, or community education. But you don't always have all of that listed in every success story or every communication that you do. They certainly may be listed as a small part of the announcement, but your focus, you have to be targeted in what the announcement is covering. We want to make sure that we're focusing on career and technical workforce, and we're doing that because we are focusing on a new industry in our region. We want to make sure that new employers, we're bringing new employers in, we're working with, let's say, the Chamber of Commerce. We want to make employers aware of how we're training a new workforce. We don't necessarily need to talk about other services that we provide in detail. We want to highlight that we provide other services at a high level, but we're really drilling down into the successes in our workforce training. So yes, you may have many different services that you provide, but they are great individual stories. And again, when we're talking of success stories, there are always strengths, and the strengths are your positives. Their challenges are what you're trying to overcome. So how can we overcome these challenges? That's what we're looking for help with. And when we're going through those challenges, and whether they're financial, whether they're staff time, whether they're just raising awareness to get students into your program. You could be more successful if more students would come into your program. That doesn't require donations. That just requires awareness. So again, being very specific on what the message is. When we look at what do we do with our success stories when we have them, there's a lot of different outlets, and we've talked about a couple of them so far. I think many of them are traditional in the formats, our local newspapers, our local websites, but now we're starting to see where do we promote those in our social media platforms. Where do we promote those where we might extend beyond our local or regional areas? And we saw that with the Oxnard newspaper. We see that our local newspaper is owned by a big national conglomerate, that we have the ability for that article to be picked up by other areas. So we want to make sure that we're drafting that in an area or in a framework that could be covered in a statewide announcement, for example. So what's the benefit to the state, not just to our region, or nationally, if we're having a great story? I do get a lot of different Google alerts in my email every day for a lot of different topics, whether they're adult education, they're high school equivalency, and I do get the same story. I may see a story about a grandmother that gets her high school equivalency in Kentucky, but I get it from a newspaper in Utah. And so they're finding those stories themselves, because local papers are always looking for content, and they look to their partner organizations. So a Gannett newspaper will look to a Gannett resource for other articles. And so it's always putting those content pieces out there is a great resource. Looking at other areas, and I use our example there for TASC. We have our own high school equivalency blog. Publishers, whether it's Burlington English or TASC or other high school equivalencies, we have our own blog sites that we're sharing information. We have our own social media sites that we're looking to promote success stories as well, just as you have your social media. Our social media sites are national in scope, just as other publishers are. So you want to certainly, if you're using Burlington English's materials and you're being successful, if you share a success story, they're more than happy to promote that for you. And that's going to go national so that your success locally will now be spread nationally. Same thing with your high school equivalency vendors. If you're being successful and students are being placed into workforce programs or college programs with their high school equivalency tests, they will be shared nationally with those vendors as well. And certainly with COABE itself. COABE is always looking to share great success stories, and being a more vendor-neutral organization, COABE is not looking for a specific test or a product, and it's a great place to share success stories from your organization and how you were able to succeed within a certain area, whether it is, again, workforce orientation or a new WIOA implementation under the new WIOA laws, and using that as a success story on the COABE pages. And there's a great collection of success stories already published by COABE. One of the key parts of the success story is to make sure you have the right information. So again, and I'm using the example, if we want to promote our educational programs at our centers, we want to make sure we're having, and I'll use the example on our screen. Within DRC, we're always looking to promote our partners. And we do that through our marketing team. We will actually interview our partners, and these are some of the questions that we will ask our partners. We'll ask them to talk about their educational center. So what programs do they offer? Are they offering low literacy programs or just high school equivalency level programs? What successes have they seen in the high school equivalency? What challenges have they seen? Do they use certain curriculum or certain methods to prepare? Are they using distance education or traditional paper and pencil, curriculum for test preparation? What's the challenges with the new standards versus, transitioning to those standards? And then a key one is, how are they motivating students? I think more and more programs are looking at, how do you motivate a student to come into your site? So if we have a success story on how a program is being able to bring in students, and some of those are very easy. You could talk about, yes, an industry moved out of our region. We have a large influx of unemployed residents. We need to retrain them. We offer retraining services. A large portion of those unemployed people needed their high school equivalency. We worked on that first. We got their high school equivalency for them. We moved them into a career workforce program. We got them retrained, and we've got them into this new industry within our region. That's a great success story. That's something that we want to work on. And so we want to build that. That's a little bit different than just that we're trying to grow the numbers of high school equivalency candidates in our workforce, in our region that we service. So again, we want to make sure what our specific questions are and what our goal is. And in this case on the screen, we're talking about how to promote our education center, and specifically the education side. And so we want to have specific questions about how we've been working on the education side. If we're looking at test takers, we have other questions for test takers. Again, and I think a big question about test takers is, what population are you servicing? Do you traditionally see the younger population, where that's a little bit of a different challenge? Are you traditionally seeing older population coming back to you? And again, different type of a student that will come back to you, maybe a different motivation. And so what have you done locally to help draw in those two different testing populations. What was the struggle that you had with those different students, whether it was the younger student or the older student, the returning, somebody that left school and now very quickly decided to come back for a high school equivalency, or somebody that came back 10 or 15 years later and is only coming back because of a job change. So a lot of different questions. And again, many of these questions are being asked by your local residents, and they're unsure on how to address this. So if you can address these questions on a proactive basis in a success story, that will connect with a larger audience to be able to draw them into your test centers and into your education program. So we're trying to connect with your local population and promote your services. And again, I think looking at the common themes, we've seen the common themes come out already is, we want to offer high school equivalency preparation. We also want to offer job searching tools, and we want to connect with local employers. And we see some of the comments below from a couple of different programs in Colorado and New Jersey, where a couple of programs, they offer ESL programs and high school equivalency prep. So that's a key area that, we may be located in an area that is a large non-native English speaking part of our town. So we need to be promoting that we offer ESL services, and those lead into our high school equivalency program. So we're, essentially a one-stop location. We can work with your ESL programs, we can work with your high school equivalency, and then transition into a career and workforce program. And then working specifically with high school equivalency and how that connects to our employers. If that works within an apprentice program, we want to make sure we're promoting those different programs, how to connect. After you have your high school equivalency, what can we help you with? We're not just going to cut you off. We're going to continue to stay with you. Now, yes, maybe that has something to do with the WIO regulation, but we're also still doing that to help our students be successful. And I think as we saw, the common theme is that we want to connect, we want to reassure the test takers that their concerns are not individual. The concerns that they have are shared by many students and many residents around their area. So, it's again about making the connection with the larger group. As we see in the bottom left of the screen, and growth and change is scary. All students worry about the outcomes of the test. So what if I happen to fail the first time? How are we addressing that locally? Have you ever done a success story on a student that failed 2 or 3 times, but then became very successful and moved on to a great career? That's a great success story. Yes, there was some challenges at the beginning, but then how did I move on and overcome those initial fears, those initial challenges, to then move on to a great success story? On the bottom right-hand side, we see, transitioning out of a juvenile correctional facility. Do I partner with transitional programs to help reduce the recidivism in my local area? Can I help transition former offenders into the workforce so that we have a more viable workforce and reduce the number of offenders, incarcerated in our local prisons? And I think, again, there's a large population of, if there's a good resource to support offenders as they're being released, we help reduce the recidivism for those populations. Looking at some other success stories, we can certainly look at different terms, and these are different options for students. And not everybody has these different availabilities. It could be that you offer the Spanish version of high school equivalency. Not all programs do. Some programs offer different payment terms, and I know some states don't offer those options, but some states allow students to pay in different formats. So, what flexibility or the testing formats. Do you offer the paper and pencil or just the computer? You know, again, are you promoting different options for students and making the students aware that there are options for them? So again, you know, those are great tools to promote, to making sure that students are aware that they have some flexibility, because they're getting their information secondhand from other students that may have had experiences elsewhere, and they may not have gotten the right information from your program. So from another part of the state, from a different state, they may have heard something different. They related on to a friend, and now that friend is discouraged. But you need to make sure that you're promoting the right information for your program so that you can always have the best possible success story for your students. And then I think just looking at a couple of final ones, just the real life example. And I think that's the final one I want to end on, is for the themes is having examples, finding those students that went through the process. And so paying attention to what the students' experiences are as they go through enrollment, and then tracking them as they become successful. There's always good stories, you just have to be aware of them. And if you're not understanding who your students are and who your test candidates are when they're coming into your programs, if you're just taking down the name and registering them for the test, even if you're just a test center, you know, if you know, you can work with them to fill out a small informational card to track them a little bit on the informational side, so that you can have a small piece of information, you know, just to know, are they employed or unemployed? And maybe they don't want to fill it out, but you're going to get some information. And so you're able to track something, and you'll be able to find a good piece of information throughout the program. And then the last one is always to remember that at some point you will need to have a financial success story. You will always have to, whether it's going up to a state legislature, whether it's going up to the State Department of Education or the State Department of Labor for your WIOA funding, when you do have to get re-granted, you want to make sure that you have the success stories on what you were able to do with the funding that you had, and having that impact on how you can expand your program, how you can be successful. So, you know, we see the very last line, we had a 93% pass rate. We've been able to maintain that, and, you know, our employment numbers are even higher than our pass rate, and we're looking for that goal of employment after graduation. So again, you know, we have some targeted numbers, not just we're looking to do better. We want to have real numbers in our success stories when we're talking about funding. So we want to have what we were able to accomplish in a hard number, and certainly 93% passing rate is great. If the number does not look good to you, there's always ways to quantify that number. And I always look at numbers when we think about our NRS gains under the WIOA legislation. You know, some of those gains are in the 60 or 70% range. But not everybody understands that those are actually good numbers when you don't have everybody staying with your program. So if you're not quantifying that, so that outside people don't understand that not everybody that enters a program finishes the program, and that 60 to 70% of the students that enter your program show a gain, but not 100% finish the program, you know, that's a great story to tell, that you're meeting the requirements of the state by showing, you know, that you're providing gains to the students that are finishing the program. That can also be turned around to tell students that if you stick with the program, you are definitely going to then move through and progress in the program and be prepared for their high school equivalency. Obviously, on the other side of always having our success stories written out and published in newspapers and on blog sites, the other side of things is the visual side. You know, have you ever published a picture of your test center? Have you ever published a picture of your adult ed center? so that people know what you look like when they're driving up, when they're walking up, where are you in relation to the bus stop if you're in a more urban setting, so that they know what they're looking for when they're looking for your location. So having that kind of connection, and again, it's that real life connection, so that programs or students know what your program looks like. And as I mentioned earlier, the easiest success story that you have is graduation. There's lots of ways to promote graduation. I've seen a lot of different ones, and some of them are just simple graduation pictures, graduation announcements. The graduation announcement can be that you have a large graduating class. It's larger than last year. It's growing. You had a unique population where you had the grandmother, the mother, and the daughter. I think I saw that this year in one of the news announcements already, that there were 3 generations in a high school equivalency graduating class. Or whether it's a formal announcement, whether you have a good speaker, somebody that's predominant, whether you have a superintendent of education that's doing your commencement address, and you want to promote that. There's a lot of good success stories to promote around graduation. And then for students themselves, I'm not going to pretend that I always understand these infographics, but I've been told that a lot of people do. But they like to see the little facts, or they just like to see the facts. And so this is an example of a TASC infographic that we've done. And really what infographics are just a lot of facts in a small area for people to kind of look at those areas. So it's, very simply another way to learn, another way to see information. So you start noticing, and I think, up in the top left corner it says, I hate school, so I dropped out. Well, if that was me, then it kind of draws me in to start looking at more of this. If I like the charts down below, what's next for you? I'm going to trade school. The reasons why I may have left school. So a lot of different reasons. And if you have an infographic on your local population, this will be helpful. So a lot of people post these types of posters in their test centers, in their adult ed programs, because this is your local population. These are the stories that your students are telling you. So these are the answers that you have. You can help support this. You can see, how old were you when you stopped going to school? Well, I was 16. Is there another chart to say, how old was I when I started coming back to get my high school equivalency? What's the average age when you're coming back? So, people are not alone is what we're trying to tell them as they go through that. I'm not going to play this video. This video is on our website, but it is a great video, and I'm just using it as an example. It is a video when a student learns that they passed their high school equivalency test. So it's just in an office in an adult ed center in New Jersey, but the whole staff had gathered. This student had been working towards their high school equivalency, taking one test at a time, and by the time they passed all the sections, they videotaped when she came in that morning and learned that she passed all the sections. And it is a great video. And again, I will share this PowerPoint, so the video will be embedded in there. You can also find it on our blog site. But it's a great video just to see the excitement of the whole staff gathering around and sharing it with this student as they go through the excitement of her being finally finding out that she has passed all parts of her high school equivalency. The other side of the videos, and again, videos are a great tool on social media, not just on our website, but you can use social media for that. Just for an interview, you can use the social media for your students to have an interview, and it doesn't have to be a long interview. You can see this one if you look closely at the very bottom. It's just 10 seconds, just a couple of quick questions. And so it's just a quick video testimonial. So, again, with today's phone technology, these can be done very easily at your test center, at your adult ed center. So you don't have to have a big production like you would have had in the past. And as soon as you're done, they can be on social media and on your website in a matter of minutes. So it's a great way to connect with your local population and to share that one-on-one interaction with your students. We, as a publisher, also have a video, and this is again more of a production. This is certainly not just something that was put together quickly, but we have a whole video montage that we share with our test centers on why high school equivalency and TASC specifically is an important piece for a student. So, again, I would encourage you to look for other resources, whether it's through your publishing partners, through your high school equivalency vendors. There are videos and pre-prepared videos that are available to you for resources. You don't have to always go recreate everything that is specific for you, whether it is that finishyourdiploma.org website where you can use those videos, or if it's something, again, prepared specifically for your high school equivalency test and the values of high school equivalency that's prepared by the publisher, those videos are available as well. And now social media. We've kind of been focusing mainly on traditional media, but just some quick facts on social media. And these numbers have probably even gone up since I've updated them already once over our initial presentation. But, so a lot of high school equivalency students use Facebook. More and more use Twitter. And the number that's even growing more, this used to be down in the low teens, and now it's up probably even over 30% are using Instagram. So if you're not using any or all of these social media devices, at your local program, I certainly would encourage you to have some sort of presence with social media so that you're able to reach your students. Again, this is how they're communicating, so are you communicating this way to reach them as well? Just by having a website, you cannot assume that everybody will Google you and find you. Again, there will be a large population that will do that, but not everybody will do that. Some people will always look for you on Twitter, or somebody will always look for you on Instagram and see what they can find for that. What they might also look for is what other experiences users have had. I do that periodically. I look up what is happening on Twitter for TABE or TASC. So I'm not going to find that on Google. I have to find what social media is saying about TABE or TASC, and I do that directly on Twitter. So have you ever looked to see what social media is saying about your specific location in your test center or your adult education center or the services that you provide, and to see what you can connect with your local users? It's also a great way to promote your local activities. You want to promote graduation, for example. Now, you're not always going to interact with everybody. If you're on Facebook, you may or may not expect to have a connection with a student that needs to get their high school equivalency. Some students may not, they may feel embarrassed that they're connecting with a test center. But just to have the awareness that they're there so that they can have the information is the important part. So if you're not sure how to do that, on how to be on social media, there are a lot of different resources available for that. Certainly with TASC, we have some resources that you can post on social media sites. You can go to our blog site and review those. But you can also look at other social media sites, and that's a great way to do that, to see what other social media sites are doing to promote themselves, and what are you doing to promote yourself. All social media sites use a lot of video and a lot of pictures. That's just the way that social media is doing it today. It's not as text heavy as a newspaper was. So again, if you haven't taken a video of graduation, you should be taking a video or some pictures of your graduation and promoting that on social media sites as you go through that, just as a quick example. Everything on social media needs to be very concise. Again, you're not publishing the whole graduation ceremony on Facebook, but you'll have a quick video just to to promote that it happened or that it's coming up. And then, as I mentioned on the very bottom, what's the feedback? Was the video not clear enough? Did people have too many questions about what you posted? You know, are they questioning what you did versus reacting to what you wanted them to see? So if you were posting something about graduation and you were hoping that the outcome was congratulations to the candidates, great job, feedback like that, and you were getting feedback was that I couldn't see anything, I couldn't hear anything, the video was blurry, you know, feedback like that, well, that's not the message that you were trying to get across. You were trying to promote your graduation, to promote the great work that your students did, and that did not get conveyed. So that's an area that you want to work on the next time you make any posting on social media. So it's again, a very short, concise update on that website for that specific purpose. When we talk about blog sites are your chance to be a little bit more detailed. Blog sites in WordPress has been used probably a more popular site. If you don't have your own website, you can go to WordPress and create your own blog site. A blog site is just an area that you can work on and create your own comments, kind of your own op-ed section. Within our TASC website, we have our own section of a blog site where we post content for that. So we don't have a separate blog site, it's within our own website. But you have a lot of different ways. But your blog site is your chance to have that expanded content. So if you, again, have something on social media, you may have a link back to a blog site or back to your website for more additional information. And there you can go into a registration page or an op-ed page for funding. So again, if you wanted to have a quick little posting, and let's say you tag your local state representative who happens to sit on the appropriations committee for funding in your state. Well, you can tag him on your graduation and have a link back to some of your funding activities, so you can have that. So that's how you would be proactive in your linking of social media and your blog site for a funding purpose. One of the last pieces is how to work with local businesses. When we talk about working with both businesses, we kind of traditionally talked about how we partner with them on the after testing side, but what can we do on the pre-testing side for high school equivalency? And one of them is to use a voucher program. And we've seen some great outcomes for high school equivalency tests using vouchers for local businesses so that they can now get their workforce trained and tested and then become certified with high school equivalency tests while they stay employed. And many businesses are seeing the value of that today, so that you're not having to hire employees that may or may not be qualified. Now you can hire the best employee, and if they happen to not have a high school equivalency, you have a pathway for them. So we'll look at a voucher program in Indiana that is working between the Indiana Department of Workforce Development and the local BlueCross BlueShield provider, which is Anthem Healthcare. Anthem Healthcare provides TASC vouchers. TASC is the test used in Indiana exclusively. But Anthem supplies testing vouchers to cover the TASC test for any Anthem BlueCross BlueShield subscriber in the state of Indiana. So if you have BlueCross BlueShield as your insurance in Indiana, your family can have a TASC, anybody in your family can have a TASC voucher, free voucher to take the high school equivalency test. So that's a great example. They're not an employer, they're a healthcare provider, and they see the benefit of getting their subscribers to raise their education level above the high school equivalency level to help with their program as well. So again, how are you connecting with your local programs? And we as high school equivalency publishers certainly are trying to do that on the national scale, but you can do that on the local scale. How do you work with your local businesses to say, you know, let's work together to make sure that your employees all have their high school equivalency certificates? And what can we work to work together on that? What programs can we put together for that? And that may involve, as much as this, you know, certainly BlueCross BlueShield is a large state employer, and they're a large state entity, and they work directly with the Indiana Department of Workforce Development, which is the adult education arm in Indiana. But you can start on a smaller scale and work within your local city and maybe find a business that has a large population of their employees that do not have their staff certified, and go from there. Just a couple of points to feedback on the voucher program in Indiana. We see a comment from Kristen Metzger with Anthem BlueCross in seeing the benefit of having the high school equivalency testing, and also from Stephen Braun with DWD. And I think it's, you know, again, how do we use these comments in promoting this program? We certainly, as the TASC publisher, have used these comments in our social media, in our press release, in other, I'm using them today. I'm using them in my presentation today. You know, so if I have a local business that I have partnered with as a test center, as an adult ed center, I want to have a quote from them to emphasize the importance of that partnership. And then I want to use that quote in as many places that I can to make that connection between my program and Anthem BlueCross or Indiana Department of Workforce Development. So I'm doing that today on a larger scale. I can do that certainly on a local scale with my local provider. I do want to look at the resources just to finish up, and I know we're up against the clock. I've mentioned them several times, the COABE Toolkit. You can certainly get that directly at coabe.org/media outreach toolkit. Their success stories are at the student success stories. And then if you want to look at our TASC blog, just as an example of the blog, the tasktest.com/blog is there as resources as well. And I will also just show you an example of the Dollar General grant page. You can certainly go to Dollar General Literacy Foundation and look at all the resources that the Dollar General Literacy Foundation has. As I mentioned, it's a great resource for national and local funding. And I will finish up by leaving my information on the page. I also have our marketing person's information. If you do see something on any of our websites that you have a question on, our local marketing person, Mike Bello, is a great resource. He's happy to answer any questions as well. But I will leave my information up and see if we have any questions to finish up. And I appreciate your time today.
Thank you so much, Mike. You did a wonderful job. I've pretty much have answered any little chat questions that have come in. I haven't seen any in the question and answer box at all. But if we do receive any, I'll definitely send those to you and you can respond to the people. Again, everybody, so that you know, this will be available on our website, so you can have this PowerPoint presentation. If you missed anything or want any further information, this will be up on our website tomorrow. Just go to coabe.org. Under our professional development, you will see webinar resources. Again, you all have a wonderful day, and thank you so much for joining us. Thanks again, Mike.
Thank you.